By the time Daniel realized something was wrong, it was already too late. The email had been sent 12 minutes ago. 12 minutes. And already his phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 1 message from his boss. 3 from clients. 7 from people he didn't even recognize. And 1 from her. Subject line: "You should probably read what you wrote." Daniel stared at the screen, his reflection warped in the glass. His name was still there, his signature, his credentials. Everything looked normal, except the words, because he had no memory of writing them. The email was precise, brutal. It dismantled a major client relationship in 3 paragraphs. Accusations, confidential details, things that should never have been put in writing. Things that could end careers, his career. "Daniel, what the hell is this?" his boss had texted. But Daniel didn't answer. Because for the first time in years, Daniel wasn't thinking about damage control. He was thinking about the last few months, the little things, the mistakes, the way everything had started slipping. Just slightly. Just enough to feel like stress or bad luck or burnout. Missed meetings he could have sworn were never scheduled. Attachments he forgot to include. Numbers that didn't add up, even though he checked them twice. And every single time, she was there, calm, supportive, smiling. "It's just a rough patch," she'd say. "You've been under so much pressure. Let me help you." And she did help. God, she helped. She proofread his emails, organized his calendar, even suggested ways to handle difficult clients. She made everything easier. Until now. Daniel's thumb hovered over her message. He hadn't replied yet, didn't know how. Because something cold and quiet had started forming in the back of his mind, a thought he didn't want to finish. What if this wasn't random? What if none of it was? He opened the email again. Read it slower this time, line by line. And that's when he saw it. Not a typo, not an error, a phrase. One he recognized, not from work, not from any meeting, from her. Something she used to say, late at night, when she thought he wasn't really listening. That's when his stomach dropped. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like a message. And for the first time, Daniel wondered, when exactly he had lost control of his own life, and more importantly, who had taken it from him. And that's not even where this story begins. It didn't start with the email. It started 3 months earlier, with something so small most people would have missed it, a receipt. Daniel had left his jacket on the back of a chair, something he never did. He was meticulous about things like that, predictable, structured. She noticed because she always noticed. The receipt slipped out when she moved it, a hotel bar, 2 drinks, late evening, nothing unusual, except the timestamp. Daniel had told her he was still at the office. Now, most people would have asked, confronted him, watched his face, waited for the lie. But she didn't, because she wasn't most people. Instead, she folded the receipt neatly and put it back exactly where she found it. And then she waited. The second confirmation came a week later, a message. Not on his phone, on his laptop. He'd left it open on the kitchen table, screen dimming into sleep. She wasn't snooping, not really. She was just there. The name didn't mean anything at first, but the message did. Short, casual, familiar in a way that felt practiced. "Same time tomorrow?" No heart emojis, no obvious flirting. That would have been easier. This was routine, which meant it had been happening for a while. She didn't open the thread, didn't scroll, didn't need to, because in that exact moment, she made a decision. Not to confront him, not to cry, not to leave, but to understand him completely. Because if you want to dismantle something, you have to know exactly how it's built. Over the next few weeks, she watched, not obsessively, carefully. Daniel's habits weren't hard to map. He liked routine, structure, control. Same coffee every morning, same route to work, same rhythm to his day. Even his lies were consistent. Late meetings on Thursdays, client dinners that always ended just before midnight, and just enough distance in his tone to make it believable. He thought he was careful, but what fascinated her wasn't the affair. It was him, the version of Daniel that needed it. The ambition, the ego, the quiet frustration he never voiced. The way he lit up when someone admired him. The way he leaned into praise just a little too much. That was the crack. And she saw it instantly. So she didn't attack it, she widened it. The first move was almost invisible. She started agreeing with him, more than usual. "You're right," she'd say. "They're lucky to have you. You should be aiming higher." At first, he brushed it off. Then, he started to believe it. She encouraged him to take on more at work, bigger clients, riskier decisions. "You're ready for it," she told him. And when he hesitated, she smiled. When have you ever failed? That question stayed with him. Because now, failure wasn't just a possibility. It was something he had to prove wrong. And slowly, without realizing it, Daniel started stepping into a version of himself he couldn't sustain. More responsibility, more pressure, more room for mistakes. And every time something slipped, a missed detail, a wrong number, a poorly timed email, she was right there, helping, fixing, smoothing it over, making sure he never saw the pattern forming. Because this was never about catching him. It was about building something. A version of Daniel that would destroy itself. And the most terrifying part? He trusted her completely, which meant he would never see it coming. At first, the mistakes felt random. A missed attachment, a number slightly off, an email sent just a little too soon. The kind of things anyone could explain away. Stress, pressure, too much on his plate. That's what she told him anyway. "You've been carrying a lot lately?" she said one night, sliding a glass of wine toward him. Anyone would crack under that. Daniel nodded, because that made sense. It had to. But then, the pattern started tightening. Meetings he knew he had, disappearing from his calendar, deadlines shifting, client instructions subtly altered, and every time he checked, everything looked correct until it wasn't. "Did you maybe reschedule it?" she'd ask gently, standing just behind him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "You've been so busy. It's easy to forget." Forget. That word started to stick because Daniel didn't forget things. He built his entire career on not forgetting things, so when it kept happening, he stopped blaming the system and started blaming himself. The first real crack came during a client presentation. Everything had been prepared, slides polished, numbers verified, strategy locked in. He'd even practiced it. Twice. But halfway through, he froze. A number on the screen. Wrong. Not just wrong, dangerously wrong. The kind of mistake that didn't just lose confidence, it raised questions. "Daniel, can you explain this?" someone asked. He couldn't, because he remembered checking it. He remembered fixing it. He remembered something different. I must have uploaded the wrong version," he said finally. But even as he said it, he didn't believe it, and neither did they. That meeting cost him more than just the client. It planted doubt, the kind that spreads quietly, through teams, through leadership, through every conversation he wasn't in. And when he came home that night, she was waiting, lights warm, dinner ready, calm. "How did it go?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, then exhaled. "Not great." She didn't react, didn't push, just nodded slowly, like she already understood. "Hey, one bad meeting doesn't define you. And then, maybe you've just been rushing lately." Rushing. Another word that stayed. From that point on, Daniel started second-guessing everything. Emails rewritten 3 times, numbers checked 5, decisions delayed. And ironically, that's when things got worse. Because hesitation creates gaps, and gaps create mistakes. Exactly the kind she needed. By the second month, the pressure had fully settled in. His boss stopped looping him into key decisions. Clients became colder. Even his team started double-checking his work. Daniel noticed. Of course he did. But what he didn't notice was how perfectly timed it all was. Every mistake, every slip, every tiny fracture in his reputation lined up just enough to look natural. And through it all, she stayed consistent, supportive, patient, understanding. "You're just going through a phase," she told him one night. "It happens to everyone at your level." At your level. She kept him aiming upward while quietly removing the ground beneath him. And here's the part most people miss. Revenge like this doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like life falling apart. So if you're listening right now and you think you'd notice something like this happening to you, ask yourself this. How many of your bad days were really just bad luck? And how many were placed there? If that question made you even slightly uncomfortable, you might want to stay with this story, because Daniel did. And by the time he started asking those questions, he was already too deep, and she was just getting started. By the 3rd month, Daniel stopped trusting himself. Not in big dramatic ways, in small ones, quiet ones. He reread emails 3 times, then asked her to check them anyway. He confirmed meeting times, then asked her to remind him. He double-checked numbers, then hesitated just long enough to miss his moment. And every time, she was there, correcting, adjusting, improving. Here, send it like this. That phrasing might come off a bit strong. Let me fix that for you. And he let her, because at this point, he needed her. The final push didn't come from a mistake. It came from an opportunity, a major client, the kind that could reset everything, rebuild trust, restore his reputation, or destroy what little he had left. I think you should go all in, she told him that night, sitting across from him, her voice steady, eyes locked on his. This is your moment. And for a second, Daniel believed it. They worked on it together. Late nights, drafts, revisions, strategy. She helped shape every detail, every word, every number. By the end of it, it was perfect, or at least, it felt perfect. The presentation was scheduled for Monday morning. Sunday night. Daniel reviewed everything one last time. Slides aligned, data solid, narrative clean. He even smiled, for the first time in weeks. I think this might actually work, he said quietly. She looked at him and smiled back. I know it will. And then, she made one final adjustment, small, precise, almost invisible. Monday came, conference room, glass walls, too bright, too quiet. Daniel stood at the front, hands steady, voice controlled. And for the first 5 minutes, everything went smoothly, heads nodding, interest building. Then he reached the core slide. The one that mattered most, the one they built together. He clicked, and that's when it happened. The numbers didn't match, not slightly, not fixable. Catastrophically wrong. Projections inflated, costs missing, assumptions completely broken. Silence filled the room, heavy, suffocating. Daniel, someone said slowly, can you explain this? He tried. God, he tried. But the more he spoke, the worse it sounded, because nothing lined up. Not his data, not his logic, not even his own memory. And in that moment, something inside him cracked. Not his confidence, his certainty. The meeting ended early. No handshake, no follow-up, just quiet professional distance. The kind that says everything without saying anything. By the time he got back to his desk, it was already over. His boss was waiting. We need to talk. 30 minutes later, Daniel walked out of that office without a job. No shouting, no drama, just consequences. And still, even then, he didn't fully understand. Because in his mind, there was still a possibility that this was all just him. Until he got home. She was in the living room, exactly where she always was, calm, composed, waiting. How did it go? She asked softly. Daniel didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, something felt off. I lost the client, he said finally. A beat. I lost the job. She nodded slowly. No shock, no panic, just acceptance. And then she said something small, something quiet, but it hit harder than everything else combined. That's okay. We'll figure it out. We. That word should have comforted him. Instead, it felt like a trap, because now, Daniel had nothing left except her. And he was finally starting to wonder if that was the point. There's a moment, right before everything makes sense. Not clarity, not relief, just alignment. When every strange detail, every mistake, every coincidence clicks into place. Daniel felt it 2 days later. It didn't come from his job, that was gone. Didn't come from his colleagues, they'd already distanced themselves. It came from something smaller, something he almost ignored, an old draft folder. He was searching for anything he could use, old contacts, previous versions, proof that he wasn't slipping. That this wasn't just him falling apart. That's when he found it. Dozens of drafts, emails he didn't remember writing. But they were his. Same tone, same structure, same voice. Except they were better, sharper, more precise, and buried inside them. Phrases, specific ones, familiar ones, not from work, from her. Daniel's hands went cold, because suddenly He wasn't remembering writing these. He was remembering saying them. At home, casually, in conversation. Things she used to repeat back to him. Almost playfully. Only now. They were here. In his work. In his emails. In the messages that had slowly, quietly, destroyed him. No, he whispered. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. Until he opened the metadata. Timestamps, edit history, access logs. And that's when the illusion broke. Because every critical change, every mistake, every final version that cost him everything was edited. From inside the house, from his account. At times he wasn't even there. And there was only one other person who had access. Daniel didn't grab his keys, didn't think. He just moved. Back home. The house was quiet. Too quiet. He stepped inside. And there she was, sitting exactly where she always sat, calm, waiting. "You're home early," she said, like nothing had changed. Daniel didn't respond. He just held up the laptop, hands shaking now. "What is this?" he asked, his voice not as steady as he wanted. She looked at the screen, then back at him, and for the first time, she didn't pretend. There was no confusion, no concern, just recognition. A small, almost imperceptible smile. "You figured it out," she said, and in that moment, everything inside Daniel collapsed. "Why?" he asked. One word, barely holding together. She tilted her head slightly, studying him, as if deciding how much he deserved to know. Then, she stood, walked toward him, slow, controlled. "You really don't know?" she asked quietly. And that's when she said it. Not loud, not emotional, just precise. "The hotel bar, 3 months ago." Daniel froze. The receipt. The message. Everything he thought he had hidden, she had seen. "I gave you a chance," she continued, still calm, still measured. "To tell me. You didn't." A beat. "So I decided to help you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "This isn't helping," he said. And that's when she smiled again, slightly wider this time. "No," she said softly, "it's not." And then she stepped closer, close enough that he could hear her breathe. "I didn't ruin your career, Daniel." Her voice almost kind. "I just gave you exactly what you wanted. The pressure, the recognition, the risk. You did the rest." Silence. Heavy. Final. Because deep down, he knew. Every step she described, he had taken. She just made sure there was no way back. And now, he had nothing left. No job, no reputation, no certainty in his own mind. Just her. And the realization that she had been there the entire time, watching, adjusting, guiding, ending him, without ever raising her voice. If you made it this far, you already understand something most people don't. The most dangerous revenge doesn't look like revenge. It looks like trust. So, before you move on to the next story, ask yourself one question. Who in your life knows you well enough to destroy you like this? And would you even see it coming?